If you've played Commander for an extended period of time, odds are you've encountered an endgame grindfest where no one has any meaningful game actions and durdles around until someone can finally accrue enough value to close it out. These games generally result from a few different patterns I've noticed. I know on this channel I've preached running more removal than bare minimum, but there is a downside to that which needs to be addressed, and that's card advantage. Every single card in your deck has a cost, and I'm not just talking about the mana symbols in the top right. There's an inherent cost to putting a card in your deck and drawing it that I feel isn't discussed enough. If mana costs were the only factor, there would be a significantly higher number of Ornithopter, Memnite, and Street Wraith in everyone's decks. They cost 0 mana, so they're free, right? Not actually. Every time we play a card, that takes a card from our hand, which is a limited resource. We started with 7 cards, 7 options to play, and now we're down to 6, therefore presenting a resource that has been depleted. The same logic can be extrapolated to the rest of the deck. Every time you draw a card, you have to wonder, if that had been a different card, would that place you in a better situation? Deck slots are a finite resource as well, and they need to be treasured, and only filled with the best cards to make your deck more efficient, rather than random cards that are legal in your deck, I guess? This brings me to the value proposition. We don't buy things because of its price point. We buy it because it's valuable compared to its price point. There's a reason we don't buy every single 1 cent card that exists, and it's because they don't bring value to us and therefore aren't even worth the pennies we'd be investing in them. Commodities have to be deemed valuable compared to their price point to be worth purchasing, and deck slots are the exact same thing. Memnite is 0 mana, yes, but we don't run it in our Goblin tribal decks because it doesn't bring us enough value compared to the space in the deck and cards in our hand that it costs us. So how does this all tie into the grindfest that I mentioned earlier? Well, first let's diagnose how we enter a grindfest to begin with. Generally, when all 4 players have few available meaningful game actions, they're stuck doing very little. So it's a safe assumption that there's probably fewer cards in hand. Probably played earlier in the game to try and keep up with the rest of the table's arms race, and there's probably nothing super great on board either. Maybe a board wipe went off and blew everyone out. They spent all their cards in hand building up a big board state, so now they're out a big board and options available in hand. So the solution is meaningful game actions. But what does that look like? We all know that card advantage plays an important part in the MTG ecosystem, since drawing more cards means having more options. So what if we look at the extremes to diagnose its importance? If we build an entire deck of card draw, we wouldn't be able to contribute meaningfully to the game, since our deck wouldn't contain any potency, unless we were going for a niche combo win. It would require a great deal of effort, but it's possible. What about a deck without any card advantage? Once again, possible, but tricky. We have to make sure our cards pack enough value in them that we're okay with only getting 1 card per turn. Higher curve decks can generally make that work since their cards have lots of value, but they're slower since they can only commit meaningfully 1 card per turn. But their late game potential is high since they're more likely to top deck a card off the top that's compact and individually stronger. So, both extremes are possible, but are they optimal? Not really. As with all things in life, there needs to be moderation, a healthy sweet spot, if you will. Drawing cards is valuable since they give us significantly more options in selection, but it takes deck space to allow us to do that. We need card draw that's valuable. Low mana that draws us lots of cards throughout the game. whether in one burst like Hilda's Crown of Winter, or incrementally like Ghostly Pilfer or Commander's Tome. So that's it, right? Just run more card draw, forehead. Yes and no. Yes, that may help solve the situation in the sense that you'll likely be able to avoid running out of gas and keep contributing meaningfully turn after turn, but no, that's not the only answer. We just need meaningful game actions, right? So, what about increasing the game actions that our cards give us normally? Let's say we get our stuff removed. Well, there's a chance that means our graveyard has resources in there that might benefit us. So, how about some effects that let us utilize our graveyard? We don't just need cards in hand if we can use flashback costs from the grave, allowing us to essentially keep these as extra cards in our hand and therefore extra options, thus creating card advantage. There are plenty of good cards that let you interact with the graveyard, but we need to make sure it fits multiple criteria, as if a card is only good in a grind fest, it might not be very often that it ends up coming in handy. So it needs to give us meaningful game actions in the late game, but also not be a dead draw throughout the rest of the game. So we're looking for something like Timeless Witness. Eternal Witness works alright too, but I'd much rather pay the extra 1 mana to have access to it later on in the graveyard. It may have more cost, but it provides us with more value. I also like the idea of running additional card draw in low opportunity cost slots like lands. Even if it's inefficient, the clue lands, Arch of Araska, Bonder's Enclave, Grim Backwoods, Mariposa Military Beach, and more all give us the option later on to dig and don't sacrifice any additional slots in our decks. Digging helps us find answers, and answers are what win us games. Tons of small solutions like this is what allows me to run the high ratios I do in other fields like removal or ramp, since I always have card advantage to fall back on. Let's not forget about X spells. Really, any card that can scale well into the late game and provide you increased value the later the game has gone can work well. Cards like Seasons Past, Genesis Storm, or Expansion Explosion. These cards work great because they can help you out in the early game, but increase in value as time goes on. So they'll always give you something to do. If we just plan our decks a little more around this possibility and account for this as an outcome, we may go into it significantly better equipped and prepared to take on the table and allow ourselves to be the one to seal the game with a hot stamped W. I have a Discord now. It's free to join, so if you guys want to jam jank with me, consider joining. If you guys know anyone that might benefit from watching this video, consider sharing it with them, so we can all become better deck builders together. This has been Toggos Rock, and I am out.